Welcome back to another episode of Local Search Tuesdays. This week I'm sharing my entire presentation from last week's National Automobile Dealers Association conference. This show is a bit more strict on design, so I wasn't able to do my standard movie backgrounds. So instead, I went with movie-themed Lego minifigures. It's about 25 minutes long, so enjoy. This is SEO in 2022. Show up better in local searches. This is the native legal stuff, which nobody cares about. So, between COVID restrictions and the chip shortage, the last few years have been really crazy for car dealers. And COVID has changed customer behavior at a fundamental level. But most dealers are still using the same marketing tactics and strategies they've been using for years. It's important to remember that every single sale in today's world, whether you're selling a car or selling service, starts with a search online. So if your dealership isn't showing up, then you're not selling what you could be selling. And winning in digital marketing isn't only about showing up in search results, it's about providing an amazing customer experience, because we know that customers shop around before they buy. In fact, if we look at the most recent data from Google, we see that there are 27 separate sessions before somebody submits a lead. Now, that doesn't mean they go to your site 27 times. It just means there are 27 separate sessions where they are visiting websites and doing research before they submit a lead. So we want to make sure that your dealership is as visible as possible for as many phrases and concepts as possible to catch people early in that process. So SEO should really be your dealership's number one priority. It is the most efficient, most effective marketing spend that you can possibly invest in. If we look at Google Analytics, organic visits from Google are your biggest source of traffic. Unless you are dropping major coin on paid search, you're going to get more traffic from organic visitors from Google than any other lead source combined. That's right. Take everything else and combine it. You still will be getting more traffic from organic visitors from Google. In fact, you'll get more leads from organic visitors from Google than everything else combined. There's a big problem with SEO in automotive, though, and that's the OEM-approved vendor system. I speak at conferences all over the world, and this is something that really doesn't exist for any vertical other than car dealers in the United States. And it's not in your best interest. It is designed to control dealerships and make sure that everyone is doing something for digital marketing, but it actually works against you if you're trying to be better in your market. Here's why. The OEM-approved vendors are locked into the same packages. Once you get into the program with Ford Direct or Shift Digital or Internet Brands or whoever it would be, you're locked into that package, and you have to give the same package to everyone. And it's very difficult to update your service level, and that's a problem because Google releases thousands of updates a year, and several major updates would necessitate a change in strategy. The other big problem is the OEM-approved vendors have to work with any dealer that wants to sign up, which means you'll end up with situations where you'll have large markets and the same vendor is doing SEO for lots of dealers in that market. And if you've got 5 or 6 or 10 dealers paying that vendor to get them to be the most visible in town, how does that work? It doesn't make sense. And they provide the exact same SEO service to every dealership because of the fact that they're locked into these packages. So if you think about it, that means a Ford dealership in Dallas is going to get exactly the same strategy and tactics as a Ford dealer in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming when there's not another Ford dealer for 150 miles in any direction. Doesn't make sense. The guy in Dallas is going to be way more competitive because there's 20 Ford stores in the Dallas market. So it doesn't make sense to give the same service to both of those stores. And the way that they have their process set up, they've got teams of people that do various things, but those team members are ridiculously overloaded if you break it down to how many dealerships per person those team members work with. So if they're so overloaded because they've got 100 plus dealers a month that they're working with, that means they're maybe spending an hour a month on your dealership for what you're paying for SEO, and that's not going to do anything for you. So how is any of that going to benefit your dealership. If you really want to win, you really want to succeed, you need a customized SEO strategy where everything is put together specifically for your dealership's needs in your location, because everything's going to be unique for you, and that's what's going to help you win. So you've got to stop choosing your SEO provider based on who's the cheapest. If you want to win, you need a car that's going to be faster than everybody else and isn't going to break down and is going to get you across that finish line first. That's not going to be the cheapest option. And you need to stop choosing your SEO provider based on who you can co-op, because the co-op funds force you to use somebody in the program. And we just went over the fact that using somebody in the program doesn't matter. Would you rather burn your co-op money, your monopoly money that doesn't mean anything in the real world, on SEO that doesn't work? Or would you rather invest a little bit of your own money and not get co-opted for it, but get results and sell more cars and book more service? You've got to look at SEO as an investment in the future success of your dealership, because the things that you do now are affecting your visibility several months down the road. And when we're talking about SEO, it's important to understand the distinction between regular SEO and local SEO. And as a car dealer, you need local SEO. Google actually has multiple algorithms at play. When someone types in a search phrase, Google's going to assess the intent of that query and choose the right algorithm. And the local algorithm that Google will use for car dealers is different. It's more complex, and it includes additional signals that traditional SEO doesn't have to pay attention to. And most SEO providers, especially the providers within automotive, only do traditional SEO, which means they're not addressing several of the really important signals that would affect your dealership's visibility in searches. We know that you need local SEO because if we do searches for anything related to dealerships, Google's going to automatically localize those results. Check out this example here where I just did a search for Ford dealer, and it shows me Ford dealers near to my location in the real world. I'm in Plano, Texas, right there above that B pin that you can see. And so it's going to show me the closest Ford dealers, even though I didn't specify, because Google understands from analyzing past user behavior that if I'm looking for a car dealer, I need someone nearby. Otherwise, if I'm looking in a different city for a car dealer, I'm going to specify the city that I'm looking in. If you need help explaining how SEO works to your boss or to anybody else in the team there at the dealership, I like to use pizza delivery as an example. Now, here's an example of one of my videos. Anytime I've got information in one of the videos in my video series that digs in a little bit more to a topic, it lets me squeeze more information into my presentation today. So anytime you see a link down there, if you happen to be writing those links down, those are case sensitive. So make sure that you write them in lowercase. But there's a link to the video that explains the concept that basically, if you search for 2 words on Google at your office, pizza delivery, you get to list all the pizza spots right by your office. You could try the same search at home with the same 2 words, and you get different results because Google's going to show you the stuff that's closest to your house. That's how Google's local algorithm works, and it does the same thing for car dealers. And that explains how it works. I like to use a simple math example to explain why you need it, and definitely go watch this video as well. But if we take it at a basic level, let's say there are 5 new car dealers and 15 used car dealers in your town. That's 20 dealers. There's only 13 spots on page 1 if you count the map pack. But realistically, we know we need to take out the Carvanas and the Auto Traders of the world, so let's drop those. That means there's probably 7 or 8 spots on page 1 that dealers could potentially show up in. If there's 20 in your town, you got to be in the top 7 or 8. If you're not doing SEO, nobody's going to find you. And even worse, there's only 10 on page 2. So if we take out the 8 that are on page 1, that leaves 12, which means 2 people are all the way back on page 2 and page 3 where no one's ever going to find them. That's why you've got to do SEO. You want to make sure you're paying attention to the annual local search ranking factor study. Now, this is a study that's going to give you better insight into the signals that matter for getting your dealership more visibility in local searches. And what they do is they take the top 35 to 40 experts across the globe in local search and send out a pretty in-depth survey about positive factors, negative factors, things like that. Then they aggregate all of the answers because nobody knows exactly what's in Google's algorithm. And if you were to have 5 SEOs optimize a site, they'd all optimize it differently. Now, they'd all use the same tactics, though. There'd be a lot of overlap in the elements that they would touch. There'd just be differences in strategy for how they'd optimize those elements. So when you aggregate all of these answers together, you get a much better feel for the things that actually matter when you're trying to get more visibility.
And I am one of the experts and have been for about 10 years on this local search ranking factors study. So I definitely know it's a pretty in-depth study. But you end up getting two different sets of results, and they give you a pie chart to give you a visual breakdown of the signals that matter. So one pie chart is going to break down the factors that influence your visibility in map packs or in Google Maps. You can see there your Google My Business, or now called Google Business Profile, is the most weighted element there. And then you've got another that shows you the factors that matter for showing up in the organic listings below the map pack. And notice the biggest here is content and how it's optimized on page and your inbound links pointed at your site. So this is pretty much your guide for what you need to do to get more visibility in 2022, or it should be the guide for the vendor you're using, but most likely they're probably not paying attention to this. The most important factors we need to pay attention to are on-site signals, the content on your site and how it's optimized, the links pointed to your site from other sites, the reviews that you get from customers, and GMB, or now GBP, Google Business Profile. So let's start by talking about the signals on your site. A lot of people have come to equate giving you content with doing SEO. So it's just about churning out a lot of pages. In fact, there'll be vendors at the convention this week that will sell you on their SEO saying that you get a certain number of landing pages per month. But Google doesn't care how many pages you have. Google cares how good those pages are. Think of it like this. If you want to show up, you need a page of content about the concept that's being searched, and that page needs to be the best answer in the local area to the question that someone is asking. So it's all about the quality of your content, not how much content you have. And remember, we know that customers are going to shop around, so you need to use the content on your site to give them a reason to go to your site in the first place and to return to your site, because again, we know they're going to go to a lot of different sites before they actually make a phone call or do a chat or submit a form or send in an email. So if you've got the same generic content as all the other dealerships in town, why is anybody going to remember you, and why would they care to come back to your site? And like I said, really hold it in your head. If you want to show up as a search result when somebody searches for you using a particular search phrase, you need a page of content that's about that concept on your site. So for every concept you want to show up for, you need a page of content. This is where a lot of dealers miss out because they don't have fixed ops content. And remember, that page needs to be the best answer in the local area to the question that the searcher is asking. And typically, the page that's going to be the best answer to that question is also going to answer some subsequent questions that that customer would potentially have after they receive that initial answer. You need to make sure that your content tells people why you're awesome. Make sure it's actually about your dealership and not the same generic BS that everybody else has. And it needs to be about the local area as well. And there's a really cool way we like to test this. Let's take the homepage content for your site and let's change just the name of your dealership and the city that you're in. Could we then change that to a different dealership name and a different city and change nothing else about the content and take that content and put it on the homepage of a similar brand dealer on the other side of the country? Would that content still work? If it still works with just changing the name of the dealership and the city, that means it wasn't really about your dealership and it was way too generic. So it's not good content. So that's an easy way to test your content. And there's another way we like to test content. Customers want to see conversational content, so Google wants to see conversational content. So all the content on your site should sound like something you would say face-to-face to someone that just walked in the front door of the dealership. So read it out loud. Grab somebody, have them sit next to you, and actually read it out loud. Make sure that it sounds conversational. My favorite little story here is years ago at a conference, a dealership came up and said, hey, we'd love to work with you and get your help. Got back to the office, went to look up their content. They were a Ford dealer in Dallas, and the homepage content sounded something like this. If you want to buy a Ford pickup in Dallas, come to our Ford pickup headquarters in downtown Dallas, where we sell more Ford pickups than any other dealership in Dallas that sells Ford pickups. So when you're ready to get your next Ford pickup, come to our headquarters downtown Dallas, where we sell more Ford pickups and give better deals on Ford pickups than anybody else that sells Ford pickups. And the guy that wrote it was thinking, holy crap, guys, we're going to rank for Ford pickups in Dallas. But every human that read it was thinking, what the heck is wrong with these guys? Another thing that you'll catch too is you'll have these big, huge lists of cities that you also serve customers in. So, for example, I was just doing an audit for a site this week, and the second sentence on their homepage said, we also serve customers in City 1, City 2, City 3, City 4, City 5, City 6. There were 36 cities in a comma separated list. You're not going to show up in those cities just because you listed them in a list on your homepage. And if somebody's already on your website, they don't care where your customers came from. Think about it like this. If I walked in the front door of your dealership and your sales guy greeted me by saying, "Welcome to our dealership. Did you know we serve customers in City 1, City 2, City 3, City 4, City 5, City 6, and listed off 36 cities, you'd probably fire that sales guy. So don't do it. It doesn't make sense for humans, doesn't make sense for Google. So once you've got all this awesome content that's about you and why you're amazing and why people should buy from you, then you've got to optimize that content for Google's algorithm. So I'm going to walk you through the page elements that you need to optimize. And keep in mind, on these page elements, you need to use the same keyword phrase every time and the same city phrase every time. So the first most important element is the title tag. It's what shows up above the URL in the little tab. It's also what populates your blue link when you show up as a search result in Google. You should never put your dealership name first because you're the only dealership. Name that, and you'll always rank number one if somebody looks for you by your name. So you want to use that space to optimize for the target for that page. So the targeted keyword phrase and the city and state abbreviation in that title tag. The second most weighted element on the page is your H1 heading. That's the big thick headline above the text area on the page. You should only have one H1 on the page. Any other headings should be H2, H3, H4. Again, it should have the same targeted keyword phrase and the same location phrase. It could be a little bit more conversational than your title tag, though. And then obviously you need the important keyword phrase in your content, in your city, in your content. But if you've written awesome content that extols your virtues and says why you're awesome and is all about your dealership in the local area, you're not really going to have to do much here. You'll already have it there. All of the platforms allow you to set customized URLs for the internal pages in your site. So it's always better to have those keywords in the URLs as well. So for example, most platforms out of the box, your used car page will be something like dealership.com/search pre-owned, and it's all one word, or dealership.com/search used inventory or something like that. You'd be much better off with dealership.com/used-cars-Dallas. Alt text on images is another big one. Years ago, Google couldn't tell what was in images. So alt text was included in that embed element in the code. So it would be a little short descriptor to describe what's in the image. Well, now machine learning lets Google tell exactly what's in images, but alt text is still part of the algorithm. And it helps you establish additional relevancy if you use that same keyword phrase and same location phrase and describe that image. It helps you outpace competitors that aren't doing it because a lot of people don't do anything with alt text. And more importantly, it protects you from lawsuits because it's actually an ADA law that every image have alt text on it. Because if someone is blind using a screen reader, that screen reading browser can't tell what's in the image and it will describe the image based on the alt text. So you can actually get sued for not having alt text on your images, which could be really, really bad for your dealership. And the final one is the meta description. And most people know about the meta description, but they don't realize that the meta description doesn't have any play in the algorithm. It has zero effect on how you rank. But the meta description is what populates those couple of gray sentences underneath your blue link when you show up as a search result. So writing something compelling can really help you get more click-throughs from search results. So include the same keyword phrase and city and state location in the meta description. And when you're optimizing, make sure you optimize for the way that your customers actually search. Don't get stuck in the dealership mindset and use the jargon that we all understand. For example, anybody watching this, if I said VDP, you'd know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a car dealer. But if you're not a car dealer, you'd have no idea what that means. My favorite example here is dealers love to say that they sell pre-owned vehicles because it just sounds nicer than used cars. The problem is, customers don't search for pre-owned vehicles, they search for used cars. So if I use Google's AdWords keyword preview tool, it will give me estimated monthly search volumes for these two phrases. And actually, when I did this, I aggregated pre-owned, pre-space-owned, and pre-owned all one word. And on a monthly basis, there's about 1,900 searches for pre-owned vehicles versus 823,000 searches a month for used cars. If you're optimizing for pre-owned, your competitors are going to kick your butts on used car searches and you're going to miss out. You also have to have a blog. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity, and you need to post on a regular basis because there's a big difference between the kind of content that goes on your site and the kind of content that goes on your blog. Site content tends to be more revenue driving. It's something that gets people to convert and send their information to you so that they can buy something. Content on the blog is more informationally focused. It's discovery-based content. It's the thing that we want to get people's eyeballs on your site to then come back and convert later. And your blog shouldn't be all about you. If you're just talking about the stuff that you sell, who's really going to care? Share your expertise. Be helpful. And if you make your blog a local destination and share helpful information about the local area, you'll gain more visibility. It's that billboard effect where putting a billboard up that somebody drives by every day doesn't mean everybody driving by the billboard is going to buy a car. But 2 months from now, somebody might get in a wreck and total their car and need a new car. But now you're front of mind because you had that cool billboard they saw every day. Same sort of thing with the blog. We want discovery impressions. We want people to find out about your dealership because you've got helpful information about the local area. And it really works well. In fact, for the dealers that we work with, half of the content we post on the blog isn't even about the dealership, and it's just about the local area. And if you hadn't heard of this before and you need help coming up with ideas of what to do on your blog, I did a video that walks through 10 different concepts you can use as local blog post ideas and kind of use those as a springboard to come up with your own ideas for content. And now we want to talk about inbound links, links pointed from other sites to your dealership site. They're really weighted in Google's algorithm. And in fact, it's one of the most important things that you should do, but it's really hard work. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get valuable links built to your site. So because of that, most SEO providers don't do any link building, especially the ones that are automotive SEO providers. And because we're targeting that local algorithm, you actually need local links. You need links from local businesses and local websites because those carry more weight. So the easiest way to get those links is to just be involved in the local community. And luckily, this is really easy for dealerships because most dealerships are pretty community-minded and philanthropic. So you're already probably doing things that can result in some pretty awesome links. But I'm going to walk you through some concepts too. Local sponsorships are great. A couple $100 lets you sponsor a Little League team or a Pee Wee hockey team or a football team, or you could do the highway cleanup stuff. You could do the 5Ks, the golf tournaments, all the things you're already doing, where it's the kind of old school stuff you would do to get community notice, but now you still get the community notice, but it's a great opportunity to get some awesome links. Now, Google's not okay with you buying links, but Google's totally okay with buying sponsorships that result in links. Meetups are great as well. So you can go to sites like meetup.com and find local groups that meet on a regular basis. And one thing that's really cool is typically your service department's going to shut down earlier than the sales department. So you're going to have that service department lounge / waiting area that's not used for a couple hours every night. Let's say you find a group in the local area that meets on the first Monday of every month at 8 p.m. You could let them meet at the dealership in that waiting area, and boom, you get a couple of killer links out of it. Or if you don't want to go that route, just look for local groups that are looking for meeting sponsors. And you can throw in 50, 60, 70 bucks a month to buy their snacks and soft drinks, and cool, boom, you get some killer links out of it. Find any way you can to get local bloggers to write about you. Even if they write, hey, I got a free oil change just to write about doing something for this dealership, guess what? You get a really killer link out of it. So it's pretty awesome. And this one's an interesting take that a lot of people don't ever really think about. I'm not worried about what clubs and organizations the dealership belongs to. This is talking to the staff and what the staff does, especially management staff in their free time, what they're passionate about. Because if they're a member of a local group or organization, especially if they're in the leadership of that club or organization, it's usually going to be really easy for you to get links back to the dealership from those websites. Join all the local business associations you can. It's a no-brainer to join these. It shows that you're involved in the community, and it gets a really killer, really relevant link. Another really cool one that we found out about a few years ago is most people that have crime watches, those neighborhood watch sites are typically in WordPress now because there'll be somebody in the neighborhood that can do a WordPress site, and then they're really hungry for content. And if you can get a link from one of these sites, they're really powerful because it's relevant down to a neighborhood level. So you can give them some, pens, hats, t-shirts from the dealership, or even better, offer a neighborhood exclusive special. So somebody in that neighborhood gets an extra $5 off an oil change or something like that. You get really great links, and you actually get a lot of referral traffic because these people are really active on these neighborhood sites. Child seat installation is another fun one. This one's not one that's going to work for most businesses, but people are already bringing their vehicles to you anyway. And it turns out most people don't know how to install their child seat correctly. And if they were to get in an accident, then their kid would get pretty injured. So you can have your staff sit through a 2-day class to be certified as an official place that anyone can come for free and either get their seat installed for free or be taught how to correctly install their seat safely. You get multiple links on city, state, and national level safety websites. It's really cool. And it makes a lot of sense because, like I said, people are bringing their cars to you anyway. We also have an onboarding questionnaire that we give to every dealer that we work with, and I'm sharing that with you here today. So you can download that questionnaire here, fill it out, and it gives you some really easy low-hanging fruit and some concepts that you can go after to help get local links, especially based on things that you're already doing. So let's talk a little bit about customer reviews. Obviously, reviews are important for attracting people, for having people come to the dealership because they're going to read the reviews, but they're also weighted in Google's local algorithm. So you want to make sure you've got a really solid process in place. You need to be proactive. You need to make it easy for people to leave reviews, and you need to ask every single customer. And I'm going to walk you through some of the elements that are in this video because this is a really important concept that you'd be surprised how many dealerships are missing out on. So the most important bit, like I just mentioned, is making it easy to leave a review. You can't just say, hey, go leave us a review and expect that people are going to figure out how to do it. And you need to make sure you're asking every single customer. So what we like to do is to set up a page on the site that's a, hey, leave us a reviews page. We like to put it at dealership.com/reviews because then it's an easy URL for everyone on staff to remember. And then that page has a simple thank you message that's something to the effect of, thanks for doing business with us today. Let us know how we did. And then you give them options for where to leave the review so they can leave it where they feel most comfortable. So that way your review profile doesn't look too stacked on any one site or other site. And here's a really cool tip. If a customer leaves a review that contains a keyword phrase that you're trying to rank for, let's say you want to show up better for Used Cars Dallas, and somebody says this was the best place to buy a used car in Dallas, that's going to help you rank better for those phrases. Now, this isn't in your response. This is in the text that is left on the customer review. But you can't tell customers what to write because that's a FTC violation. You don't want to risk a federal fine. So what you can do is a little Jedi mind trick, and you can ask questions on that, hey, leave us a review page. That will point them in the right direction and subliminally will make them more likely to leave those responses. And make sure you answer every single review. I can't tell you how many dealerships I see that only answer negative reviews or only answer positive reviews or just answer reviews here and there when they remember to do it. It's really important to answer every single review. And remember, when you're responding to negative reviews, those responses are not for the person that left the bad review. It's for every potential customer in the future that wants to see how you handled that situation. So let's finish up with your Google My Business, or as it's now called, Google Business Profile. It's your new homepage. It's the first impression that you're going to make with potential customers. Whenever someone searches you by dealership name, it's that knowledge panel that appears over to the side. It's also what allows you to show up in the map pack. So having a well-optimized Google My Business profile or Google Business Profile will help you show up better in those local searches there in the back or in maps. You want to make sure that you add UTM tracking to your website link and to all other links that are available if you have like an appointments link or a products link or anything like that, because analytics is inherently broken. A lot of the referral traffic that comes to your site from mobile devices. So if somebody does a search on mobile, on Google, and they click that button on your Google My Business to go to your site, it doesn't pass that referral information to Google Analytics because of privacy concerns, which means a lot of the organic search traffic that you're getting on mobile is incorrectly classified in Google Analytics as direct traffic. So you want to add UTM tracking to that link. So it basically needs to look something like this. Now, I left it as source being GMB because that's what most people still have. You don't need to go change it from GMB to GBP, but you want to make sure that source is Google My Business or Google Business Profile or Google Listing or something like that, and that medium is organic. Because if you were to leave source as Google and then use a campaign variable to specify that it's GMB, you can't tell at a single click level in Google Analytics the difference between organic traffic from Google. If you use something besides Google as the source, then it breaks that traffic down and you see the difference at the top level between clicks that came in on regular Google listings or clicks that came in because they clicked on your website link in the 3-pack or in your GBP profile on the right side. You want to make sure you've got a local phone number. Having a local area code is really important to that local algorithm, but that doesn't mean you can't do call tracking. In fact, you should do call tracking because we want to track all the calls that you're getting and the increased calls that you're getting because your SEO is working. But make sure that call tracking number has a local area code and put the tracking number in as the primary number. So that's what shows to customers, and put your actual local number in as an alternate number. And the categories that you choose have a massive influence on how you show in local search results. So make sure you're choosing the right categories. I've got a video here, or you can just read the transcription down below the video in the blog post that walks you through the categories you should have on your primary listing, the categories you should have on your service listing, and the categories you should have on your parts listing. And you should not mix categories between those three listings. Sales should only be sales, service only service, parts only parts. And the category that you choose first, your primary category, has more weight. So be strategic in which category you choose. If you're that Ford dealer in Dallas, you want Ford dealer as your primary category because that's what you're fighting the most on. But if you're a Ford dealer in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming and there's no Ford dealer for 150 miles in any direction, you'd probably want used car dealer as your primary category because you're the only option for Ford dealer for a pretty wide radius. So you're going to show up anyway, but you're really fighting against the other franchise guys in town and the other independents. So you'd want to put used car as your primary category. And you want to make sure that you've got your inventory displayed. It originally came out as last year only mobile devices would show your inventory. Now it shows on desktop as well. So the inventory feed will display all of your inventory there in your profile and actually have little, kind of call them micro VDPs. They're VDPs with top level information that are hosted on Google, so they pop up really quickly. It's amazing. So you've got to make sure that that is on your primary GBP. And like I mentioned a second ago, you should have a separate GBP for service and a separate GBP for parts, and they should be nested and explicitly listed under your main listing as departments. And there's a video there to walk you through how to do it if you don't know. Make sure you're using Google Posts. Google Posts are amazing because they're basically free ads that show in Google search results. Why would you not want to do a free ad? They help you stand out from your competitor, and they help get you conversions sometimes without people even needing to go to your site. But most people do them wrong. They only pay attention to the full post, but nobody sees the full post unless the thumbnail is enticing enough to click on. So you've got to optimize what shows up in the thumbnail if you want to be successful with posts. So you really need to pay attention to the image. Don't have half the car cropped out, or don't have half the text cropped out if there's text in your image. But cropping is really wonky and inconsistent, and it's slightly higher than center. So I have a Photoshop guide that will give you better control over that final thumbnail. So if you download the guide right there, it looks like this. And anything in the white grid is what's going to show up in the thumbnail, and then the full information, like the extra stuff at the top and the bottom, shows when they click that thumbnail to see the full post. And I did a video for Moz, which is an SEO toolset, and they have a really famous series called Whiteboard Fridays. I did a Whiteboard Friday last year all about Google Posts. It's packed with about 20 minutes of really in-depth information on posts. So if you'd like to learn more about how to really rock on posts, go watch that video. The last thing I want to talk about, it's really important to pay attention to the questions and answers widget. It's been around for several years, but a lot of people don't realize it's there because it's actually an element of Google Maps, not of Google My Business or your Google Business Profile, so it doesn't show up in your GBP dashboard. It's a widget that allows anybody to ask you a question, and any random person can answer that question for you, so that should kind of terrify you. Customers actually think that it's a chat feature or an instant messaging feature and that somebody's on the other end waiting to answer that question, but really it's just community discussion, so anyone can answer for you. And questions can receive multiple answers. And the primary answer that's displayed as the main answer is the one that has the most thumbs up, the most upvotes. So you want to pay attention and make sure that your dealership answers are always the ones that are the most upvoted because it's a better experience for potential customers. Then you can even ask your own questions. You're allowed to do it and even encouraged to do it by Google. So load in your common questions. Nobody's going to go to that FAQ page on your site if you still have one. So put the common questions in and then answer them and make sure your answers stay upvoted so that you have a better pre-site FAQ experience. And that's important because as somebody goes in to type a question in, if a similar question has been asked and answered in the past, then Google will autocomplete and then auto answer that question as that customer is typing it. So if you've got that question and answer already there, again, better first impression experience, more likely for that customer to call you. So let's finish up with some fun examples of the Q&A section here. The first one, This one's an example of a question that got upvoted. Questions can get upvoted as well. If a question gets 3 or more upvotes, instead of being the normal questions and answer link, it shows right there in your profile. And notice this one is a Chevy Impala, and they were driving, and it's overheated. And notice nobody answered the question. That's service work that dealership could have done if they'd been paying attention. Or here's a fun one. Somebody says, hey, your website sucks. And somebody said, yeah, I'm not a fan of it either. So clearly they're on dealer.com. Ha ha ha. But this is an example of a question you could actually get removed, because your website sucks is not a question. So you could click the 3 little dots to the right side and dispute that question and have it removed. And here's a fun one. I was doing an event for FCA, now Stellantis, in Austin, Texas, and I always like to pull localized examples. So I pulled this one, and the question shows that there are 6 more answers, but the primary answer to the question says, don't go here, look at the reviews, I had a horrible experience, they lie to you and everyone else. But the dealership answered the question, and the dealership's answer, notice when the dealership answers, it has the dealership name and it says owner. Clearly a much better answer. But the primary answer had been upvoted with 1 upvote, and the dealership answer had no upvote. So it just so turned out that this guy was in the room, and he said, oh my gosh, what do I do? How do I fix this? And I said, oh man, it's super easy, no problem. Let's just grab these 3 people right here that are still sitting around. We had them all log in on their phones, go to the dealership, click thumbs up on this answer, and immediately the dealership answer appeared to be the primary answer, and it was a better first impression for potential customers. Here was a fun one for a conference that I did in Boston a few years ago, where the rooms were really confusing because it was a really old building, and the hallways were super twisty, and the room numbers weren't ordered consistently. So someone actually asked, how are the room numbers ordered? And this guy says alphabetically. And look at that smug smile. He's super happy about his funny answer. But that doesn't really help customers. So the hotel should be paying attention and get a better answer on there. And this one's my favorite of all times. It's for the London Eye, the big Ferris wheel on the Thames River in downtown London. This is the old answer. This question is still the question that's been upvoted to their profile, but the guy changed his answer because he thinks he's a comedian. But the question is, do you have to wear a helmet? And the answer is, you don't have to, but you can if you wish. I believe Viking helmets are a popular choice. And that's really funny, but again, the London Eye, which is a massive, massive, massive tourist destination in London, is not paying attention, and that's not really the best first impression. So if you load all your own questions and keep your answers upvoted, then your pre-site FAQ experience is awesome, and it looks just like this. And that's kind of the goal. That's what you want to do. Last little thing, I have a scoring matrix that I use when I speak at 20 groups. It's kind of a rubric where we look at the basic tactics. Now, I'm not going into strategy. This is just foundational SEO 101 that any SEO out there that knows what they're doing would agree, oh yeah, this is the stuff that should be done on the site. There's a lot of things we look at. We look at the content on your site and how it's optimized. We look at the links pointed to your site. We look at your Google My Business or your Google Business Profile, and we look at reputation management. So we're looking at reviews on Yelp and on Google. And we put it all together, and the maximum score is 100 points. The average score is a 45.3. If you'd like to get your dealership scored, let me know. Find me afterwards or find me sometime this weekend. Let me know. I am happy to score your sites for you. If you're doing your own SEO, it is a really great guide for what you need to do to help your dealership have a better foundation for SEO. And if you're using a vendor, it's a great guide to hold them accountable and see if they're worth the money that you're spending. So hopefully that will help you. If you want to get scored, just find me, drop a business card off, do whatever. If you put in the work and cover all of the basics and continue to cover the basics, that customized SEO approach is going to get results every time. Here's a couple of examples because I know people always want to see real world answers. And this is a Kia dealer that started with us at the beginning of 2020, right before COVID started locking everything down and everybody else's traffic tanked. And he's continued to just go up and go up and go up and go up. In fact, he's over 1,300% increase in traffic at this point. We had to turn these slides in really early, so obviously it only goes through August. And here's a Chevy dealership, same thing. It just continues to go up and go up and go up. And here's a Toyota dealership, same thing. Go up and go up and go up. So that's why the customized approach is the way to go if you guys want to win. So that's it. Any questions? Let me know.
Thanks for sticking around to watch. I hope you enjoyed it. That's definitely all the time we've got left for this week's episode, so you know what that means. Put your hand on the screen right here. We totally just high-fived because you learned something awesome. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Local Search Tuesdays.